Okay, welcome back. I hope you were able to talk with each other, get some really good stories, kind of think back to your time as a child and maybe some good moments, maybe some really tough moments. When I've done this activity in the past, I've always been amazed and honored by what people will share um, in these sessions. So now that you're in the mindset of what it was like to be your child's age, we want to talk about like when your child has a moment of emotionality, right? Uh, Usually we're dealing with the bad emotions, the tougher ones for us to handle, although sometimes when the kids are really excited, that's also tough to handle. So we want to talk about turning these emotional moments into what I like to call magical moments. So in a magical moment, we take, um, we basically what a magical moment breaks down to is that we first have to have emotional awareness, right? So we figure out as a parent, we recognize the child's emotions, the expression of emotions and what they're going through. And so then when that happens, sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my screen. There we go. Okay. So when that happens, and we recognize a child's emotion, and I always joke and say, I'm giving you a little look under the counselor hood because oftentimes counselors will say, or therapists, psychologists will be like, hey, that seemed to make you really angry, or that seemed to upset you, or seemed to make you feel, whatever the feeling is, but we call it out. And by doing that, we're giving you an opportunity. One, it gives us an opportunity to connect with you that, hey, I'm listening and I've noticed. And you can do the same thing with your child. The other thing this does from a neurobiological standpoint is it takes the emotion, animals also have emotions, right? They have fear, they can feel, you know, attraction towards others, right? Or other animals, they can feel different emotions, right? Um, and so animals have that. And so when I talk about emotions, often it's part of our intuitive brain, or what I like to fondly recall to as our lizard brain. And in order to get it out of our lizard brain, which is very reactionary and doesn't process, doesn't really think about why it's happening, it just reacts to it. We want to take it out of the lizard brain. We want to put it in our prefrontal cortex, which is where we spend most of our time logically processing something. It's where we do our pros and our cons. It's where we plan for the future. It's where we decide to wait 3 minutes before we eat that second marshmallow. So we want to get it into our logical brain. So by saying, I noticed that you seem really angry right now. By saying that, the child has to stop and address, yes, I am really angry right now. And it's just gone from the lizard brain up to their cerebral cortex, up to this prefrontal lobe. And now they have to process it. So when they do that, it takes the intensity of the emotion down a little bit and it encourages them to validate the emotion, like, yes, I am feeling angry, or to say, no, I'm not angry at all. I'm mad, or I am irritated, or I'm something else. Maybe you can say, hey, it seems like you're having a really good time right now during something that shouldn't be a good time. And the child may say, I'm not having a good time. Well, okay, well, I saw you laughing. Usually that means you're having fun. Yeah, I don't know why I'm laughing. Do you think this is, and then you can have, it opens a discussion, right? As opposed to saying, stop doing that, right? Then the child immediately shuts down. They're defensive. They've now stopped listening and you've gotten nowhere. So the magical moment is you identify the emotion, you help your child identify the emotion too, and then you figure out, you engage with the child about it, you express empathy, like, man, you seem really upset about that. I'm sorry, I don't like seeing you upset. Is there something I can do to help you? Or, hey, you seem to get really angry at your sister. Um, I can get irritated with other people from time to time too. And snatching that toy away from your sister, do you think that was the best response? Or how could you have responded differently? Or what made, what emotions were you feeling when you snatched it away, right? So you get the kid to open up a dialogue. I'm the first to tell you, I know this is hard. We have to be on our best game a lot of times to be able to do this. With practice, I can tell you that you can start to do this more and more when you are not on your best game. There have been days where I've come home and I've been really tired and grumpy, and I'm able to switch into this magic moment scenario more and more as I've practiced it. I've gotten it to the point, so this is brag alert. My favorite moment was I taught this to my son, who I think I've told you is 10, and now he does it to me. And he will tell me, Mommy, you seem really irritated right now. And I tell you what, when he does that, it immediately snaps me out of irritation. And I go, you know what, buddy? I am irritated, but I'm not irritated at you. And so what he did was take the personal, because kids are really good observers, but they're horrible interpreters. So they think that every emotion, every action is because of them, right? It's often why kids take divorce really hard. They assume the divorce is because they made a mistake, which, as parents know, often that isn't the case. Kids add stress, but it's not because of that. It's because of the relationship between the two people married. So kids often internalize whatever's going on around them as their fault or because of them, for good or for bad. Um, and so when he does that for me, when he recognizes and names that emotion for me, I'm then able to validate that. He feels connected to me, and then I'm able to very quickly say, oh, I'm not irritated at you. Or if I am irritated, I'm like, yeah, I am irritated. I really didn't like the way you dealt with such and such. Could we have dealt with that a different way? But either way, we've now connected and we're building an awareness of our own emotions. So I hope that made sense for all of you, and that explains kind of that magic moment um, situation. So I want to do another activity with you. I want to talk about recognizing this magic moment, emotional coaching response moment, as we call it, versus emotional dismissing. So I kind of gave an example earlier where I said, you can either be the person that says, like my son used emotional coaching on me, right? Mommy, you seem irritated, versus just crying and running away or stomping off or saying, stop that, or I hate you, right? So in one case, calling out the emotion is using that emotional response. Emotional dismissing, which a lot of us grew up with, right? We had parents that say, we don't cry in this house, or, um, you know, stop that right now, or don't you do that to me, right? Like you're immediately cutting the child off. So what that's telling the child is what they're doing isn't okay. And unfortunately, from an emotional standpoint, all emotions are okay. They're there for a reason. It's how they react to them that might be the problem. So we have to validate the emotion and help them change their reaction or their behavior. So the activity is I want you to look at these different little clumps here and tell me which ones are emotional coaching versus emotional dismissing. Okay, now that you had a few minutes to look at it, we can go through these. I think I'm going to see if I can. I don't think I'll be able to move them, but I can circle them. Okay, so the first one, Daddy, I stubbed my toe. Oh, you'll get over it. That one, dismissing, right? Rub some dirt on it, kid. Now, depending on the situation, we might not have a lot of time to cuddle the child, but what could be a better way of saying it? Maybe, oh man, I hate it when I stub my toe. It always hurt really bad. But if you rub your toe, the pain will go away. Or I can get you an ice cube. That'll help. I always hate it when I stub my toe. It hurts a lot, right? Difference between emotional coaching and, hey, kid, you'll get over it. How about this one? I don't want to clean my room. It's my room, right? I'm sure some, especially some of the older kids, we've heard that in our teens, right? I don't need to do that. The parent, I understand you don't want to do that. I have chores to do. I don't like to do too. But what happens if I don't clean your clothes or if I don't clean the dishes? Right. So suddenly we're saying, like, I understand you don't want to do it, validating, right? Then relating it to something we have to do. Like, there are things I don't like to do, but I know I have to do them because if I don't clean our clothes, then eventually they get really stinky. No one wants to be around us. Um, I could tell my children from firsthand. I walked into a friend of mine's room one time who was not cleanly, and there was a rat in their room. This person had piles of clothes in their bedroom, clearly didn't clean very often. There was a rat in there, and that was disgusting. Also, the rat had like left its, feces everywhere. So, what happens when we don't clean our room? Well, rodents can occupy them. We can get ants, right? It can ruin our clothes. When our room isn't clean, we can't find things quickly, right? So there will be an example where you can say, "Don't you remember when you're trying to get to soccer practice and you couldn't find, your jersey or, whatever the case may be?" Um, Another one, "Mommy, Sam just hit me." Well, what did you do to deserve it? What do you think, when going back to our communication segment, what do you think, what did you do to deserve that is telling the child that getting hit, if you get hit, you must have deserved it. So how do you think that message is going to continue on in that child's life? And think about if that happened to you, right? Which I'm sure it did happen to some of us. What did that mean for us? Did that mean we suddenly took on every time someone was mean to us as we did something wrong and that we must not be valued or we must not be good enough? So again, that's a more dismissive one. Okay, everybody's mean to me at school. I just don't want to go. Sounds like you don't like to go to school and you feel really frustrated about something. Okay, that's a little counselor therapy-ish, right? Maybe it's like, wow, it's really hard when people are mean to you. I remember, and talk about a time when you like had a kid that was mean to you in school, which everyone has, right? Somebody's been mean to us in our life. There was a time when so and so was mean to me and I really never wanted to go back. Or, I had a coach that yelled at me and it made me feel awful. Or I had a, teacher that yelled at me and I didn't want to go back. But, sometimes I realized that they were being mean because they were having a bad day. And, or and you can talk about it. Or was there a time when I was mean to you? Did that mean I didn't love you? No, I had a bad day. It wasn't the right thing to do, but we got through it. And how do we get through it? So there's again a learning experience you can have. Okay. So now we've kind of gotten to the end of this segment. You all have been amazing listeners and participants. Um, I want you to take a minute again to reflect on your children. And I want you, if you have some paper and if you come back to these sessions, I want you to make sure you bring paper and pencil. If you've ever had me as your therapist, I like to give homework and make people write and draw. So if you can bring that to session, I want you to list 3 hopes that you have for your child. And then on top of that, I want you to write down what expectations do you put on your children that are your expectations and which ones are your child's expectations. So, for example, this was something that I saw done very recently. Um, Parents got their child's report card back, and the children were like, older elementary, middle school age. So the grades, this wasn't a getting into college grades kind of situation, but still the parents really believed that these children should be getting really good grades. So the kids brought their grades back. They weren't awful, but they could be better. So they actually the parents sat down with the children and they had the kids look at each subject and write down before they showed them the report cards what they thought expected to be getting in each class. And then they were supposed to write next to it what they thought they should be getting in each class. So what they were thinking they were going to get and what they think they should, like what their expectations were of like what I know I could get in this class, right? So reality and like shooting for the future. In some cases, they're going to be the same grade. In some cases, they're different. And then the parents wrote down the same thing, right? Then they showed the children their actual grades. So in some cases, there's one child that actually said they were going to get a B in a class and they actually got an A. And so that was a really good talking point where the child did better than they expected, but they talked about why, like, why did you think you were going to get B? And they talked through, oh, I got this one assignment back. It was a good discussion, right? And the child exceeded their expectation. And then the parents like, well, I really expect you to get an A in that class. So I'm glad you did. And like, now you can do it. In another case, a child expected to get an A and they didn't get an A, they got a B. So then they talk about why it's the same thing, right? So this is a really good area where you want to really be able to show the difference between what are you putting on your child versus if it's actually within their reach, or was that an expectation that you had as when you were a kid from your parents that you're passing on, or maybe an unfulfilled um, thing that you want your child to achieve? And is that really realistic, right? You want your child to be the basketball player you never were, but your child's only 5'2". Is it a realistic expectation? Maybe they're Muggsy, maybe, they're amazing and they totally can. And you don't want to shoot them down, but you want to make sure their expectations are realistic and then they are their own. Okay. So just think about that. And then we're going to talk about, what insights you gain from this exercise. And so I will pause again and then we'll go back and we'll talk about what we gained from the exercise. Okay. I'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome back. So, what insights I heard that were gained? We had some discussion about it. I kept that out of the recording. And what insights we gained? Insights that we do have expectations that we put on our kids that really are ours, right? It seems to come up a lot in sports or in extracurricular activities. Also, expectations. We had one parent share that they have a child with cognitive delay, and the parent was highly successful in school and got excellent grades, very intellectual, and their child's still really young, but they have a cognitive delay, so they're not performing at grade level. And the parent has these right now unrealistic expectations and has these feelings of disappointment, right? And so what that does to the child is that child feels that sense of disappointment from the parent all the time. And so the parent realized, wow, I'm putting this disappointment on the child when it's not their fault. They haven't done anything to disappointment. They're doing great given their disability and their cognitive delay. They're doing amazing and they're getting so much better. Instead of being proud of them, I'm putting my own expectations onto them. So I wanted to share that particular insight because I just thought it was so beautiful how that parent came around and really owned their own expectations. And so that was great. And I commend you for that. I want to end there. I want to say thank you for joining us tonight. I will take some questions, but I'm going to stop the recording. Um, this was a great session tonight. I hope you found it of value. And if you did, please share with others, share the link with others. It'll be the same Zoom room every week on Wednesdays. Next week, we will not have a Wellness Wednesday. So if you missed a session, you can go to the recording and we'll watch that anytime. It doesn't have to be from 6 to 7 on Wednesdays. And I'll be back in a couple weeks, back in August, to share some more time with you. So have a great night. Thanks again. And for everyone that's in the room, hang on and we will chat in a second. Okay, have a good night.